Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for taking time to join our first digital live recruiting event in Nigeria. My name is James Ndiga. I'm going to be the moderator of this session. A technical recruiter here at the African Development Center, part of the global talent acquisition team. And we are the ones who are entitled with sourcing, screening, and hiring the amazing engineering talent globally that joins our engineering teams that continue to build the amazing products and applications that have over 1 billion daily active users. But before we engage with our panelists today, I'd like to give you a brief about Microsoft history in terms of their investment in Africa and what ADC entails so far. So Microsoft has operated in Africa over the last 30 years, and in that time, we've been able to build very strong partnerships across the continent that has they have helped us bridge gaps in infrastructure, connectivity, and capability. And we work to empower countries in Africa to digitally transform while creating sustained societal impact. And in those 30 years, we've been able to, achieve several milestones. I'll just highlight a few that I think are commonly known here in the continent. For example, in 2013, we managed to launch the Microsoft for Africa program, uh, which formalizes investments in access, skills, and innovation. And the goal for the Microsoft for Africa program is to accelerate the continent's growth and economic development. In March 2017, Microsoft opened the first hyperscale data center in Joburg and Cape Town, that's in South Africa. And this data center is a global provider to deliver cloud services from data centers to the continent to solve unique challenges with globally relevant approaches in the continent. And we are currently also evaluating, expansions opportunities in Nigeria uh, by another data center. And as a further demonstration of Microsoft commitment in Africa and in line with our mission, which is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. In May 2019, Microsoft launched the African Development Center, where we have two sites, one in Lagos, Nigeria, and the other one in Nairobi, Kenya. With the African Development Center, we intend to establish a premier center of engineering by tapping into the huge talent pool of software engineers that we have in the continent, and they become an integral part of the engineering teams that continue to create innovative solutions that have both local and global impact. So the Microsoft engineers that we've been able to hire so far in both sites in Africa continue to use artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies across their work, and optimize software's updates across the globe. And the products are designed to enable this seamless, data rich, and AI infused computing of the cloud to the edge. Finally, late last year, we opened the Microsoft Africa Research Institute, commonly known as MARI, and this research institute focuses on conducting localized research to understand, build, and deploy innovative cloud and AI solutions. So, in addition, the research center will help us to address core opportunities and help to solve local challenges at scale. So you can see that Microsoft has really committed in terms of like tapping into the large pool of engineers that we have in Africa and continue to help us um, build solutions that have both, that solve the problems that we are currently facing in the continent. Um, Having said that, allow me to introduce the speakers of the day who will be sharing their journey at Microsoft, why they chose to join Microsoft, and also what excites them about a career in Microsoft, the growth opportunities here, and why they would like you guys to consider joining Microsoft very soon, either as program managers, software engineers, researchers, applied scientists, all data engineers. So I'll start with the first speaker of the day. Duni, you can introduce yourself. What you tell us, what you do, and what excites what excited you about what excites you about Microsoft so far?
Hi. Um, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Oladuni Abiodun. I'm a software engineering lead at Microsoft, and I work on the Microsoft Mesh mixed reality platform. Um, I've been at Microsoft for uh, going on 5.5 years now. I started. Actually, I guess my journey at Microsoft actually started as an intern. I interned at Microsoft for the first time in 2013, and then I had sort of two internships, after which I returned as a full-time employee. I've worked in sort of a diverse range of spaces at Microsoft, on everything from server management to um, multimedia to um, supply chain operations, and now I work on sort of the um, building the next generation of computing with the Microsoft sort of mixed reality platform. Oh, your second question was what excites me about Microsoft? Well, I mean, it's just honestly, one of the biggest things for me is the breadth and diversity of the type of problems that you get to look at and solve across both um, um, problem areas. So everything from agriculture to healthcare to fintech and commerce and banking, and like across the board, and also up and down the stack. So everything from like sort of low level C systems programming all the way up to distributed cloud systems, quantum computers, and the like. And Microsoft is, I think, the only company that I know, or at least one of a very small handful of companies that has such a depth and breadth of sort of areas of technological interest, and the opportunity to sort of tap into that, build there, learn there, is one that I value quite a lot and have gotten to leverage a lot in my career.
Thank you. Um, Thank you, Duni. Over to you, Tony. Tell us about yourself, what you do at Microsoft.
Um, Hello everyone. My name is Tony Sholani Shodara. I work at Microsoft here in Nigeria, specifically on the Mixed Reality Africa team. We just recently launched Microsoft Mesh. I hope you heard about it. So that's a product that I have been working on for the past 1 year. Speaking of years, I have been at Microsoft for close to 2 years now. I've been with Microsoft since the inception of the Lagos ADC. Fun fact, I was the first employee of the ADC. So it's kind of surreal how far we've come. So before Microsoft, before I joined officially as an employee at Microsoft, I was still somewhat involved with Microsoft a few years before. So I used to be what is known as a Microsoft MVP. MVP stands for Most Valuable Professional, and that basically meant that I was regarded as a Microsoft technology expert within the technology community, the worldwide tech community. Um, I really, I have worked with a bunch of different kinds of technologies. Like Denis said, across the different parts of the stack. So my background is started out uh, as a web developer, so mostly websites, back end, front end. After that, I did a bit of DevOps, and then now I focus majorly on systems programming. So at Microsoft specifically, I build the SDK for the Microsoft Mesh developer platform. There's a lot of like low-level C++ code happening underneath. It is very interesting. And in terms of why I like being at Microsoft, I think one of the biggest things for me is the sheer amount of extremely intelligent people that I get to have such proximity to. One of the crazy things for me when I joined was the fact that the person who designed the Windows NT kernel or the architect of the C# programming language was just a message away. Very recently, we had the creator of the Python programming language join Microsoft, and it's just interesting how easy it is to kind of like just reach out to these people and have conversations with them, and just they go from the pages of Wikipedia articles to, I mean, being people you could just like hit up and say hi, good morning to. I think that for me is one of the biggest things. And the second thing will be the vast amount of different technical opportunities and technical problems that you have to solve. I love trying my hands on new things, and at Microsoft there is no shortage of that. That's it for me. Thanks, James.
Thank you for that introduction, Tony. Over to you, Jackie. Tell us about yourself and what you do at Microsoft, and why you're excited to work for this company.
Okay, so hi everyone. Happy to speak with you all today at this event. I am Jacqueline Ekweme. So quick story on my journey to Microsoft. I think after my first year of the service to your country program we have here in Nigeria, I did that at an engineering consulting firm where I worked as an IT support staff. I moved to a financial institution where I spent most of my working career, probably gave them like 12 years of my time. I worked in different roles like business analyst, a project manager, a product owner, and then I moved to another financial institution where I headed their technology solutions and software development team for about a year before they had a merger. And after this merger, I was deployed to their fintech subsidiary to head their digital products and solutions team. And then before I was transferred back to an IT program manager for the wholesale business. So I left this organization to join Microsoft in October 2019 in a very interesting turn of events. So while I worked in the fintech subsidiary, we had an annual tech event where thought leaders in the IT industry will come together to share on possibilities of what can be achieved, like when you leverage right innovations with technology. As we're making plans for the 2019 edition, we're shortlisting speakers and planning for the program. My boss actually came into one of the sessions and said the Microsoft team had reached out to them to sponsor and be part of the event. And they had two leaders, Alex Kipman and Phil Spencer, who were coming to Lagos, to speak live at the event. So in my usual curious way, I asked, oh, why are they visiting Lagos? And he said they were in town to launch the Africa Development Center. And I said, really? Microsoft is opening a dev center in Lagos. How can I get a job there? And of course, my boss gave me the evil eye. I was like, seriously? I was like, yeah, seriously. So he told me that from what he knew, the recruiters may not even be based in Nigeria. So I said, okay, let me go online and do my research. So I went to the careers page and yeah, there were openings for engineering positions in Lagos. I think I may have applied to maybe 2 of them. And then I followed a couple of Microsoft recruiters from our region on LinkedIn and started getting myself prepared for the interview because I was so sure that I would be hired into a position in ADC. I was pretty excited, I would say, when I got the email response that had been shortlisted for the program manager role. I went through the interviewing process and here I am today, 1 year plus and still, excited at the journey. And I'm here as a program manager in the ADC Lagos in the Windows and Devices Care organization. CARE actually is an acronym for Compliance and App Readiness Experiences. It is a global engineering team working out of Redmond, Ireland, China, India, Kenya, and Nigeria. And my team is chartered with driving adoption on our Windows updates by providing an intelligent service in Azure to partners in our ecosystem to validate their workloads against our pre-release updates. So as a program manager, I work closely with these partners to understand their test practices, see how we can enable our service to bring value to them. And this actually involves evangelizing our service at events, having roundtables, one-on-one discussions with early adopters and potential users of our service, getting their feedback to help us frame our product vision, define and prioritize use cases, which our team focuses on based on the feedback received, and ensuring we're delivering value to the customers. And for me, I would say reasons why, right? Why Microsoft for me? I have 3 top reasons, right? So I have the first one, of course, the opportunity to live my personal mission, which kind of aligns with Microsoft's, to empower every person on the planet to achieve more. I am really, really all about people, you know, helping people and all of that. I'm all about people and relationships, so that aligns with me. And Microsoft for me is also a platform to make a bigger impact. When I worked previously in other organizations, they were impacting thousands, millions, but here we moved to working on services that impact billions of people. And the third thing for me that stands out is the growth mindset culture. I've always wanted to work in an organization that thrives on learning and innovation. And here at Microsoft, everyone is invested in your success, ready to help you do and be better. Yep, so that's it for me, James.
Thank you, Jackie, for sharing your journey, joining Microsoft and how it's been so far. Coming back to you, Duni, curious because you've been here for 5 years plus. Maybe you can share with us what does your day-to-day look like at Microsoft, and you know, what are some of the growth opportunities that you've experienced as a software engineer that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So I guess, what does my day-to-day at Microsoft look like? That's such a difficult question to answer, mostly because there really isn't a standard day-to-day at Microsoft, right? I mean, and it has changed so much for me over the last few years. But I guess you could say, you know, there are days that, you know, look like a typical sort of engineering day. You know, we start the day with a stand-up with the whole team. Actually, usually it's more like you end the day with a stand-up with the whole team because we work in a distributed team, and so some of our team members are in Lagos and some of our team members are in Redmond. We have team members in Dublin and Zurich and Enningen, which is in Germany, and Cambridge in England. And so we have like a very broadly distributed team, and as such, you know, there's a relatively coveted time slots for stand-ups and things like that between, you know, roughly, depending on daylight savings, between like 3 p.m. and like 6 p.m. Lagos time. And so, you know, really, you know, you start your day and you kind of just get at it. You look at whatever it was that you were working on the previous day, you know, depending on what area you work in, you might be either be doing something in everything from, you know, like we said, the breadth of technology, anything from, you know, low-level C++ programming today to Azure infrastructure deployment tomorrow, to sort of some web technology for building user experiences the day after that. But you pick up whatever task you're working on and you just get at it. And if it is a day, in our case, we have a stand-up every other day. And so if it's a stand-up day, then like at some point in the evening, you go to stand-up, you give folks your updates, you say, hey, this is what I'm working on, et cetera, et cetera. You end up, you know, working slightly shifted hours, at least is my experience, where rather than, you know, waking up at 8 a.m. and working till, you know, 4 or 5 p.m., you end up doing something like maybe you start working at like noon, and you work through to like maybe 7 or 8 p.m. Again, depending on workload and things like that. But that allows you to have enough time where when you need to collaborate with someone in another time zone, you have an opportunity to do that. Prior to this role, this is a relatively unique role. Prior to this role, my job has ranged from, building an Xbox app to planning a conference to, building test infrastructure for a cloud service. Today, I do a lot of work in sort of design and implementation of a bunch of distributed services that back the Microsoft mesh. And so that's sort of what my day to day is. So it can involve anything from, design reviews to reviewing pull requests to, implementing a feature to tracking down a bug. And Microsoft is extremely sort of customer focused. And so I also spend a decent amount of my time, talking to customers that are in our preview program and learning about what they need and responding to their customer requests and things like that. And then, you have planning exercises and so on and so forth. So it really spans like a broad range of things. And then, sometimes we get to do things like this, which is come and speak to the community. You get to spend time, talking to members of the ecosystem and learning about what is new in the tech landscape, etc., but also doing work in sort of helping to do interviews and recruit and do things like that. So my job is sort of many splendored in that way, and it really ends up depending on the day.
Thank you. Thank you, Duni. There's a question here for you in line to what you mentioned regarding working with distributed teams. You mentioned your team is globally distributed. So there's a question here from the audience, and I would like to drive this specifically to you. How are you coping with working remotely during COVID? Has it been difficult to collaborate? And Tony, feel free also to chip in.
Yeah, sure. That one is actually a very interesting one. I think that our ability to collaborate has actually gotten much better in COVID. The pandemic has had a huge amount of sort of negative consequence for, both personally, economically, socially, for the world. Specifically in the context of the question that you asked, though, I found that the thing that like working from home during a pandemic does is that it sort of acts as this sort of great equalizer. Because normally what used to happen would be that, there were a lot of meetings that happened as discussions in the hallway or that happened in conference rooms in the office. And there was always this sort of experience, whether it was for those working from home versus those working in the office, for those working in the office in Redmond versus those working in the office in Dublin or versus in Lagos or whatever, where like depending on where the sort of center of gravity for the meeting was, there was like a possibility that folks that weren't in that center of gravity would feel somewhat excluded from the experience of the meeting. But now that we have meetings where everybody is on Teams, right? The ability to collaborate has sort of been like equalized across everyone, and that has created sort of a really nice opportunity for everybody to be able to make their contributions and feel heard and things like that. And additionally, I think it has significantly increased our culture of like thinking and writing things down as a means of communication. And when things are written down, it allows you to communicate and learn and build context asynchronously. And we also record meetings. So like there are a lot of things that just come out of the box as features because you're using Teams, because you're using Office 365 for your collaboration, or Microsoft 365 for your collaboration, that you wouldn't otherwise maybe get. And so like now I can miss a meeting because it's in the middle of the night for me, but I can go watch the recording after the fact, right? I can skip a design review because I have a conflict, but leave my comments in the doc, in the shared documents where the design is implemented, et cetera, et cetera. Tony, did you have
Great.
something to add?
Yeah, so I don't have a ton of stuff to add because Dunia and I technically work on the same team. I will add a few things, but I will further push this question along to Jacqueline. Um, but just before I do that, I guess Denise spoke a lot from the rhythm of business standpoint. I would speak a bit from the more interpersonal standpoint. I think COVID has allowed us to make a deliberate attempt at actually building interpersonal relationships with the other people we work with, especially those who are in a different location from where we are. Um, so, for example, I and a bunch of my colleagues, a bunch of my teammates, we do have set up this call so that we can just jump on a call and just say, "Hey, what's been going on? How's life? Um, any new things happening with you? Any interesting life updates? That kind of thing." In a normal day, because you work from an office, it could be very easy, especially if you're not a naturally outgoing person. It could be quite easy to just come into the office, do some work, stand up and then leave immediately. And then we're doing this thing at least on my team that we call body connections. So every month you're paired with someone from a different location, and you guys just hop on calls and just chat about stuff, talk about like career history, life history, a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, I think COVID is tough because we have all been on mandatory work from home since last year March. So it's kind of getting to our first year anniversary of working from home as a Microsoft employees. But I like that it has made us a bit more intentional about building good relationships with the people that we otherwise would take for granted because we see them every day. But yeah, so Jacqueline, how are things over at at M365 Test Baseland?
Yeah. So, Tony, thank you for passing that on to me. I would say, well, I've been coping well, so to speak, working remotely because I guess we we had been a remote team for most of the time before COVID. So all our meetings and collaborations always seem to have happened remotely. This is me speaking from the program manager's perspective. But of course, then we still had interactions with the engineers, that were working with us, and to try and foster, that sense of togetherness and community. Of course, we've come up with different ways within the team to stay connected, even though we're not physically in the same space. So we have our, I think, our weekly virtual lunches and all of that, where we all get together and just try to have fun as much as possible, play games together and all of that. And personally, not even having that, having to work from the same space, I would say, day in, day out, for me personally, I think it began to take its toll on me, maybe like 2 weeks ago or something. And I really was feeling, tired of where I'd been sitting to work. So I just kind of moved around, so to speak. So I went and set up my workspace in another location in my house, and that worked for me. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Coming back to you, Tony, I remember in 2019 April when you posted on Twitter that you're joining Microsoft, and you mentioned earlier on that you're the first hire for the African Development Center. Most of us were really excited that about that move. So I like you to tell us like what made you decide that you wanted to join Microsoft, and how do you keep yourself up to date with the latest technologies, or learning in a very fast-paced, growing environment, especially from what we have heard, what your team is actually doing?
Gotcha. Thanks for the question. The very first question was why I chose to join Microsoft. There's a short answer and then there's a long answer. The short answer, one word, Duni. Long answer was I literally did not have any plans of joining Microsoft. I was aware they were opening a new. I was aware they were opening a new office here in Lagos. Because Dunia and I and my current manager, we had met prior to that to talk about the opening of the office and what that would entail. It just sounded like something I was going to be externally involved in because already pretty much had my life slash career planned out. Um, and then I guess after a while, after multiple talks with Duni, I kind of realized that you don't always get this opportunity to start something new in a new place, for a company like Microsoft. And that just seemed like a very unique challenge that may not necessarily repeat itself. I mean, there's always going to be code to write. There's always going to be there's always going to be services to design or architect. But when it comes to opening up a new office for a company the size of Microsoft, in a completely new location, yeah, that doesn't show up every time. And I guess I was attracted to all the unique challenges that will come with that. And I will say this though, it has greatly contributed to my growth, especially as someone who has been interested in taking up more leadership positions within engineering teams. To the second question about how I keep myself up to date. So I am fortunate to be on a team that what's the word, that supports experimentation. You don't always have to stick to the confines of your day-to-day job. There's a piece of technology that you're interested in. Oh, go play with it. Let's see how it works with the current product that you're building. And then, maybe you demo it, maybe people get interested. Maybe, the senior guys on the team are like, oh, let's turn that into a product. There is a good amount of work-life balance that is also promoted. That has been, of course, a bit harder to do because of COVID and working from home. Duni doesn't seem to agree based on his facial expressions. But there is a certain amount of work-life balance that allows me some ample amount of time later in the day to do personal stuff. So I'm very actively involved with open source projects. So that is kind of what I use to keep myself, kind of separate myself from the echo chamber that is Microsoft. Because the truth is, Microsoft is an extremely large company. It's very likely that everything you are going to need to build the product you're working on has already been built by another team within Microsoft. So the need to actually go external to Microsoft to look at things, to play with new technologies, doesn't always happen unless you're deliberate about it. So I'm somewhat happy that I do get that time to do my own research, do my own personal experimentation, and I'm working on a team that is very researchy. So coming up with new ways to do things or coming up with new approaches to solve problems is something that is extremely encouraged.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. So we've heard a lot from the engineering side. Let's move now to the PM, the program manager, Jackie. We'd like to know, what are some of the growth opportunities that we have in Microsoft for someone who is in line with a program manager career line, and how do you keep yourself learning and being relevant in your team and in the industry as a program manager?
Okay, so there, like everyone has said before, Microsoft is like a really huge company, and there are so many open positions, not just even in our region or our local environment, so to speak. So if, for instance, you're interested in changing your role or maybe moving to another position that would probably give you an opportunity to grow, so to speak, in your career in different ways from which you're getting in your current position, that is also available. So there's the, let's say, internal posting, so to speak, of vacancies. Let me put it in that in a way that is probably relatable to people. So there's that internal posting of opportunities, so to speak, whereby you can always go to check to see where your next move would be. And of course, having that candid discussion with your manager, they are, let's say, invested in your growth, and they would work with you to see how best you can move to whatever new position or role that interests you. In terms of learning, the ton of learning resources, ton of learning opportunities. We have a vast e-library, I would say, access to the best learning platforms and research articles. Anyone that is not learning really or improving themselves, so to speak here, it will be because of a lack of interest. I always tell new members that join my team, so to speak, I always tell them that they need to be careful, because by the third week, they'll probably be at that point where they have an overdose of information. There's so much, knowledge going around, so many opportunities to learn from your team, from other teams. There are day of learning sessions that have been, actually marked out for different teams. At least in our organization, we have day of learning opportunities. We have brown bags. We have tech talk sessions, and there's so much that you can do to grow and advance in your career, so to speak. Yeah.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Sticking to you, it's always very unclear when we talk about program managers at Microsoft. Maybe you can give us advice on how, if I'm a software engineer or I want to pursue career in program management, what are some of the things I need to do in order to be successful in this role?
Okay, so I would say we always talk about the program manager elements, right? Oh, did I lose? Sorry, did you?
Yeah, we lost you for a bit there.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. So the PM role has a mix of competencies. And the way we look at it, not one person would have all, but depending on what you're involved with, you can actually add value to your team. So there are like 3 areas that we usually talk about the PM competencies for the PM role. You need the competencies to be able to frame, right? Framing the problem, framing the vision of what is supposed to be done. So in framing, you're looking at competencies for creating the visions for products, defining products, planning, prioritization, delivering, customer value proposition and all of that, brokering information between the teams. Then when it comes to defining, right, you need to have strong competencies in communication, in storytelling, being able to give, create specifications of things, drive clarity, evangelize what you're working on, embrace criticism, because that comes a lot, because you're the first person that goes out there to talk to people about what the engineers are doing, so to speak. So you'll be getting a lot of, flack, so to speak, from the markets, So you should be able to embrace criticism. So you should also have a lot of self-confidence, be ready to take risks, be able to motivate and engage all the team to work together towards the vision of what is being done, have that passion and be optimistic. And then the third area, which is like when you're actually delivering the value, right? Accountability speaks a lot. Being able to collaborate with people, being able to make those decisions, because it's really, at the end of the day, it's left at your table as a program manager. So the program manager actually is the one that is kind of in between the customer and the engineers, so to speak. So you need to be able to speak the language of the customer and speak the language of the engineers. Let me just put it that way. So when you're talking to the customers, let them know what this service is, what this product is, what the vision is, in the customer's terms, and take their feedback and come back to the engineers and let them know in technical terms what the customer's needs are, and represent the customer at the table, so that when the engineers are coming up with their products, they're actually building, products that's, would be usable, so to speak, by the customers. So in delivering, yeah, I think I talked a lot about the competencies for delivering too. So lots of decision making, negotiation, being agile, being creative, and being a problem solver. Lots of things go into the PM role. You may not necessarily have one, or all of them, but you should always be conscious to have a mix of all of this in all the interactions you're doing. Yeah, so that's it, James. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, yes, you did. Tony, I want to bring you into the picture here, and I want you to share about some of the challenges that you faced as a software engineers, and what advice would you give anyone who's facing maybe similar challenges or different challenges on how to overcome them as they continue pursuing a career or becoming an elite software developer?
That in itself is a challenge. That question in itself is a challenge. I guess number one, you get questions like this as a software engineer about what challenges you as a software engineer. I have to think very deeply about this particular one. I mean, if I were to start out, I would say I probably point to the country we live in, just purely as a product, as you being a product of your immediate environment. So usually the first kinds of problems you tend to have as a Nigerian will be typically around the infrastructure. Do you have electricity? Do you have good internet so you can do your learning and watch all your video courses? Do you have a very good laptop? Are you able to afford original softwares needed for your work? I guess those were kind of the initial challenges for me. Trying to start out as a software engineer within Nigeria. I guess at the other end of it will be as a person, I'm extremely inquisitive, and there is something called information overload. It's like, what do you want to learn? Because there's so much information out there. How do you specifically select that? Okay, this is the thing I should be focusing on so that I can move my career forward. Are you able to attach your interests to the specific day-to-day tasks that you get to do? And then finally, I guess choosing the organizations, because one thing that I have learned in my career is sometimes the organizations you join can either help accelerate your career or slow it down, or sometimes you can even decelerate it. So you also want to be very mindful of the kinds of organizations that you join. You want to take into consideration the growth opportunities. I understand there's always going to be the need to pay bills and need jobs, you need to take care of yourself, that kind of thing. So that sometimes may always trump your need to do impactful, meaningful work. But I'd say that's something you want to really consider. The organization that you end up working with as a software engineer will go a very long way into impacting how fast your career goes. Another challenge that I did have, because I started this software engineering journey about 6 years ago, back then, as a Nigerian, it wasn't so easy to break into the worldwide software engineering market. Now that is not much of a challenge anymore, because now you have tons of software engineering Nigerians moving to Germany or Canada or other parts of Europe or and even other parts of Africa. And then you of course have Microsoft ADC here. So the whole being a Nigerian on the internet, being how the world sees us is really starting to change, and that becomes less of a challenge with each new day. That answer your question, James, or were you looking for something a bit more specific?
No, that covers it all. I want to bring Duni now to the picture here to talk about the benefits and culture at Microsoft. Duni, do you want to tell us what are some of the benefits of working at Microsoft and how is the culture like that makes everyone attracted and want to join Microsoft? So tell us more about the culture and the benefits that you enjoy as an engineer or as an employee at Microsoft.
Sure. I mean, the it's a very interesting experience working at Microsoft. I think one of the most defining characteristics I think of Microsoft's culture is like curiosity and impact. Those two, I guess, not one. So I think a lot of what we do is, to be honest, attempting to do things that have really never been done before, right? And whether it is, figuring out a system to help to validate software across, like, essentially billions of devices and hundreds of thousands of combinations of hardware and software and operating system versions and whatnot, or if it is trying to figure out how to make a hologram stay stable in a single position for multiple people on different devices across space and time. No matter what it is that you're doing, we find that basically the only things that most of the things that end up being worthwhile to do at Microsoft are things that nobody else has done before. And so it ends up requiring a level of curiosity, of grit, of desire for impact, right? To say, hey, I want to be able to go figure this thing out. And I think that is sort of, from a culture perspective, one of the stronger things. But on top of that, and that curiosity, I think, if you talk to our CEO, he will refer to in a bunch of ways, but he'll sometimes refer to what is known as a growth mindset, right? This idea that we don't know everything there is to know, and that we are always learning, and that's what we are doing all the time is learning. But on top of that, I think having a culture, we also have a culture of sort of respect and being able to say, hey, I'm learning, and I believe everybody else around me is learning, and everybody is doing their best, is making an attempt to do their best work, and approaching everybody else with that type of energy is something that allows us to sort of collaborate effectively and achieve great things together. And then, but also in that same vein, holding ourselves and others accountable for delivering on the things that we say that we will do, right? And having the integrity to say, I will do this thing, and making sure that we do them. So I think sort of the growth mindset, the respect, the integrity, the accountability, these are sort of some of the core cultural pillars of Microsoft. On top of that, I think your other question is what are some of the benefits of working at Microsoft? So I think, honestly, particularly for someone working at Microsoft in Nigeria, I think my understanding of the health plan the healthcare coverage that you get is sort of a huge benefit, and sort of the breadth and depth of scenarios that that covers. The fitness benefit that allows you to pay for a gym membership or pay for, fitness equipment, and just like making sure that, like, our employees are healthy and well and taken care of. But honestly, also one of my favorite things is like that a significant part of your compensation is in Microsoft stock. And as a Nigerian, at least for me personally, right, like where the Naira is doing what the Naira do, as they say, it is super valuable to have a component of your compensation be in Microsoft stock that is denominated in dollars, but is also sort of growing or has been growing pretty rapidly. When I started working at Microsoft, I think the stock price was, when I was an intern, the stock price was like 30 something dollars or 40 something dollars. I believe last I checked, it was like 200 and something. And so watching that grow over time is sort of a super valuable thing that I think not that many people think about as like a meaningful part of sort of their compensation, but is like super duper valuable. And then finally, I think, so I talked about healthcare, I talked about like stock. And then finally, I think Microsoft has some of the best sort of support systems for employees. Everything from like, the vacation that we offer to people, to the floating holidays, to sort of the depth of care that we have about the mental health of our employees and things like that. All of those things come together to offer what I think of as like an extremely compelling package and an extremely compelling deal. And then on top of that, like, at least for me personally, I have a phenomenal manager, and like that's nice. So
Thank you. Thank you, Tony, Jackie, and Duni, for sharing the amazing experience life at Microsoft, the growth opportunities, and the amazing products or applications that you're building. I'm sure now everyone is curious, like, how do I get to join Microsoft? And I want to bring Yinka now to share, the recruitment process of the software engineers and program managers. What does it look like, and what do we look out for at every single stage of our hiring process?
Hi everyone, my name is Yinka, technical recruiter at Microsoft based in Lagos, Nigeria. So getting to the question about the application process, the first stage, of course, is to visit our careers page. So if you've never been on the careers page, do make sure to jump on there and have a look to see all the open opportunities we have. Regarding the application process, the first step, of course, is to make sure your CV is up to date alongside your LinkedIn, because our recruiters do check that out. So make sure your CV and LinkedIn, reflects your current experience, past experience, projects, some courses you might have taken, anything to just show you have the right competencies to get into the pool. So after applying, the next stage is for recruiters to review the applications, and the candidates that we do evaluate to meet the requirements for the role will be shortlisted, and then they will get a codility challenge from us. The codility test basically tests your technical skills, your ability to solve algorithmic problems. Depending on your score, if you get a really strong score, of course, you catch the attention of the recruiter and the hiring team or the hiring manager, because they do look at the codility reports and the profiles as well of the candidates. So at that stage, if you get a good score, you catch the attention of the recruiter and the hiring manager, you get shortlisted to go to the interviews. Now, the interviews are 4 rounds. Typically, we do everything in a day, so we'll call it the full loops. There'll be a combination of technical and non-technical interviews. We have so many resources on the websites covering the breadth and depth of what we assess for in our interviews. And depending on the outcome of your interviews, if you do end up being successful in your in the full loops, basically your recruiter will get in touch with you with some feedback, and you progress to an offer, and basically we get you through the background checks, and then you join Microsoft. It's that easy. And if unfortunately you end up not being successful in your interviews, then of course your recruiter will get in touch with you as well to give you some feedback, and as well give you some pointers on what you could do better, and how you could improve for future interviews. So pretty much that's what the interview process looks like. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Inka. Now, as we wind up, any parting shots for anyone or general advice for anyone who's looking for a job as a software engineer or as a program manager? 30 seconds. I'll start with Duni.
Yeah, sure. So I think my main piece of advice would be learn to solve problems, and learn to solve problems in a systematic and algorithmic way. There's a bunch of tools, whether it is sort of from sort of the open courseware from MIT or Stanford or whatever that you can use, or other types of programs, or Codecademy. There's a bunch of programs where you can go learn specifically about how to go about breaking down and solving problems, and specifically sort of the types of tools and terminology that we use for thinking about our problems. And the reason I say that is because a lot of people, are very focused on, or ask me a lot the question of, oh, like, do we take Python programmers? Do we take C# programmers? Do we take JavaScript programmers? Java, this, that. And the truth is that at the end of the day, on any given day, you can be thrown in and end up working on anywhere on the stack, right? So the Microsoft Mesh, for example, is platform agnostic. It runs on iOS, on Android, on the web, on the HoloLens, on PC. And so Tony, in his day-to-day job, ends up having to deal with everything from C++ to C#, to Java, to Objective-C, to Swift, to whatever else, right? On the cloud, we're doing C#, we're doing TypeScript, we're doing, JavaScript, we're building web experiences, cloud services, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm sure Jacqueline can speak to that as well. But like, the thing that sort of underlies all of that is learning about the underlying principles and the underlying approaches to problem solving that then allow you to pick up whatever language, whatever tool, whatever is required for the problem at hand. So that would be my one piece of advice.
I hope that covers also for Tony as a software engineer. Let's hear from Jacqueline. As a program manager, piece of advice for someone who's looking for a job as a PM.
Okay, so I would say as a PM looking for a job, right? I guess Ayika has shared the basic things, right, that you should have done, so to speak, which is like, going to a careers page, following recruiters and all of that. But in terms of the competencies for the PM, you would need to be able to demonstrate, a lot of the leadership and technical competencies you have. You need to have an interest in learning new things, exploring new things. You should be able to drive clarity in situations, so to speak, or clarity about things. Those are the three areas I would like to share. And then I would also say for people who want to be program managers, in Microsoft, typically it's kind of like a combination of what you would say someone is a business analyst, a project manager, and a product manager. So think of those three roles that we know traditionally in our area, and think of you having a wide range of competencies across those three type of roles. So your project management competencies will be coming into play, when you're tracking, the work that is being done by the engineering team. Your product management competencies would come into place when you're framing the vision of your product, thinking like 3, 4, will I say, horizons down on how this product should evolve even before it has been created, being able to sell the idea to the customer and to the engineering team. And of course, the business analyst part comes into play when you're able to analyze the data in the field and all of that. Yeah, so that's it from me.
Oh gosh.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. We really appreciate you taking your time to join this conversation. We hope it was insightful and you're excited to start a career with Microsoft. In case we haven't answered your questions or you have a burning question that you like to follow up with us, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn or any other medium that you have access to us, and we'll be able to support you to the best of our capacity. Wishing you a very nice evening and looking forward to receiving those applications in the near future. Have a good evening.